Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Practical Wisdom, Season 1, Fear of Success. Today, we are super lucky to have both my friend, mentor, and fellow coach, Anthony, here with us today. Anthony, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, my name is Anthony Campo, currently living in South Jordan, Utah, originally from California. So a little bit of a transplant. My coaching career, I guess, started when, I decided I wanted to learn more about how to make myself run faster, jump higher, so that I could play college football. And that ended short due to the, majorly influenced by the passing of my dad in my sophomore year in college, and ended up I went into business at 24 and got kind of burnt out and was disconnected from what I was doing, and ended up starting a CrossFit gym. Ran that for about 8 years, and then I started doing some coaching. I thought it was fun. I always liked talking to business owners. I always, felt like I saw things they didn't, being around a business owner myself. And, I've been obsessed with, I guess, this topic.
Because I think so, which is probably why I asked you to be on.
It's like we have so much, it's talked about a lot. What's success, right? And I think, if we want to transition to that, obviously right now I'm head coach at Fearless, just to end that part, head coach at Fearless Coach Academy. We help, coaches earn their first 100K and beyond. And it's a fun aspect because this topic really comes up and new coaches get smacked in the face with being able to look at success and follow the steps to success and go from there. But yeah, I mean, you have to step back and first of all, ask yourself, what is success? And it's crazy that we're doing this right now because I started having some major breakthroughs in this category. Okay.
Great.
So yeah, I'm obsessed with learning on a lot of different fronts. But I was listening to kind of like a guy I've followed for a long time. You can consider him a mentor, been done a few of his programs, and he was talking about kind of like it was kind of a couple different topics, but I basically came to my own synthesis based off of that we all have this frame, okay? And this frame is our worldview, right? So this is how we see the world. And that frame, and this is kind of how the stuff that I've experienced is when I've tried to go out and do things and either succeeded or failed, succeeded and been unhappy with what I did, unsatisfied, and then, all that. Inside that frame, and what makes up that frame is our values. And if we want to go on a story, I got smacked in the face with that one time by a coach. Our values, our wants, needs, desires, like our responsibilities, our priorities, that makes up our worldview. And the picture inside that frame is our vision of success, is our vision for our life, right? And where we see ourselves now and where we see ourselves going, okay? And it's another piece that I picked up that kind of synthesized this from the number of different talks, but that picture is actual puzzle, if you think about that. Because if you ask yourself right now, like, a lot of people starting off on their path towards this abstract thing called success and where they're going and what they're being pulled to do, because a lot of times people can't clarify it. It's a puzzle piece of, these things that we have to go. And each time we put that puzzle together, we have a new opportunity to adopt a new frame, which may be made up of the old frame, but we want to expand that frame. But what happens in that sense is that the puzzle gets broken again, right? Not necessarily we own that piece, we own that art, and we're walking towards the new photo, right? And we get to create that whole thing. This is something I'm just kind of been mulling around. So that's kind of like, and I would say success is actually putting that piece of that puzzle together and completing that frame. So we have these different frames and different pictures we put together along our lives.
Okay. So something I think is like, I think a lot of things about you are interesting, but some things I do think are really interesting is you had a couple of successful businesses, but you're also, success in terms of like fitness. You're also own your own gym. And so there's that vein of success where people think of kind of separately, right? You have this success in your physical fitness. You've had success in terms of your business. And then there's your home life and all these other things. Do you think that people look at them individually, or is there more of a collective definition of success?
Yeah, I think this analogy of the frame, each piece, if you consider your body success, right? To put that all together, how that all fits together inside your life, with a vision for your life, it's different from um, it's different from everybody else's. And let me give you, my definition now is different than it was in 2012, 13, and 14. And I was like training an hour and a half a day, right? Just because we were in the gym. It was a thing. I had a coach. It was great. It was my journey at that time. So even during this time, after I walked away from that phase of my life, I've thought I needed to go back and put that piece back in to find success. And it just broke other parts of my life.
Yeah.
So
if I restate that, I think what I'm hearing is you kind of have like a holistic view of success. So it's the frame being all of your life, and maybe I'm oversimplifying, but each puzzle piece could represent a component, right? Maybe one is like your body, your health. Maybe one is your family, one is your work. So does that tie in well with what you're saying?
100%. Yeah. Make it real simple. You're going to define that piece. That piece has got to fit your values, body, spirituality, relationships, and in your business.
So if we define success, right, we just decide what our frame is looking like and try to put our puzzle pieces together. What do you think makes people fearful of reaching the thing they want? Like, they want it, right? They put this frame together. They've said they've desire this outcome, yet a lot of people fear achieving what they want.
Yeah, because a lot of what we have to, like, subconsciously, I believe we know, especially if you're a coach, you have to journey into like your dark stuff, right? To get to the other side, right? And I think there's a fear there. There's also a fear of like, maybe a limiting belief I've experienced is like, well, who are you to actually like want that or be worthy of that, to be, all that. And there's that fear of like having to answer that question, right?
I think fear is good or bad, Anthony?
Oh, it's essential.
Hmm.
It's a like, it was crazy. The first time I stepped, when I first started coaching, one of the quotes I came up with is "Let your fear be your guiding light," because what you're afraid of is where you can grow.
Mm, that's interesting. So is I think what I heard you say, and I'm not positive, but almost like the only way to the frame to success and the parts that make up success is through the fear.
I'm not saying it's an absolute, but it's going to be a part of the journey. And at some point, if you would, stepping back into what is your definition of success.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the keep going back to there, because I say that in the sense of like, oh, am I afraid, if my definition of success in my fitness and body is to, like, I've been walking like with a weight vest, And, and that, I went from this kind of like one definition of success to,
Mm.
okay, I'm just gonna I realized that my values and where I wanted, like if I got really deep onto it, was longevity, right?
Mm.
So I don't have to experience fear there. The only thing is like I have to face the inner critic of, it being like, oh well, you're just being lazy.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um if we're talking specifically to fear, and it's really adopting that new, I think there's like the fear of like who you have to be at that point. Like, I mean, are you really worthy of having that? Right.
Mhm.
Um, I know myself is like, there's been times like, if we go back to my dad passing, like, I mean, I was coming off a really good year, right? Of my first year at football. And I was, I gave up going to a college to go to a bigger college, go to a junior college, and then go to a bigger college. And now I'm walking into my second year, started getting recruited, and then I found out my dad's sick.
Mm.
And like there's a pattern within my life where there's things are good and then something happens, right? So there's that fear of like, oh, I'm gonna get something, but I'm also have to sacrifice something. And a lot of times that sacrifice is painful.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what are some practical tips that people could use to not let the fear hold them back from getting to success?
Um, just literally be honest about what the hell is happening, what you're feeling, and what story is running through your mind. And being able to, like, so I talk very metaphorically, but something that just came out when I found out my dad passed is like, um, you're gonna have to face the darkness. So, and it's like there's so much people like I thought to the path to success, the path to overcoming the negative, the challenges, adversity is positivity, right? Which it's a dichotomy of both, right? You cannot, and what the way I practically applied that was suppressing the darkness, suppressing the feelings, suppressing what it was, and just focusing on the light, right? But the thing is that that has its limitations.
Yeah.
And, like I can look at practically my life now and go off and have like, oh yeah, it's it's really good, but being committed to something else, you have to, I've met my limitations, so every time I have to go back into the darkness. I have to accept the anger, I have to look at that stuff, and I have to step back and choose a new path and create a new future by changing the story that I was creating the feelings in the first place.
Right. So what I heard you say, I believe, is um, reject the idea of always pretending that everything's rosy, right? And be aware of other feelings like fear, like being afraid, and feel them, right? Experience them so that you can go through them and continue on that path. Is that like a summary of kind of where you're at with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not to say that you're doom and gloom and you think the worst is going to happen, but suppression of those feelings are going to limit the level at which you could create on the other side of it.
Yeah, and I think what that also comes up for me in that in terms of that is people can actually sort of tell, like now there's this very huge movement, this authenticity movement, which probably not just now, but has been for a while. And I think part of that comes from everyone was always pretending everything was fine. And people know that they're humans. So everything isn't fine for them. It can't possibly always be fine for you. So maybe part of the path to success or the path to authenticity is allowing for bad days, allowing for, the darkness to come in sometimes. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at it, you have to master it. Like, you know, I guess the biggest shock to my world in this was when I literally, um, my dad was taking time off work because he wasn't feeling well, and I picked up his X-rays, and you know, I opened them up and I read them, and it said a large mass next to his aorta. And I don't remember that time if they wrote on there that it was like, oh, it's, inoperable or whatever it was, or it was a very risky surgery, but it was a it was a fulfilling, like a prophecy inside myself that I had from when I was a little kid. And I immediately, like, by the grace of God, like something opened my heart at that point, reading that, whatever set me up to that point, set me up to just intuitively go get a journal and start writing. And one of the first things we talk about darkness was like a little poem on darkness, and it has to, as the darkness turns, as the darkness turns to light, meaning the darkness becomes so bright. That's what it is. The darkness becomes so bright. The dark day turns to night. So like you go, when you find out something like that, like the person that you've like closest person to you in the world, right, is going to you're going to experience them leaving you. You know what I mean? And I just, for some reason, I started writing, I started journaling at that point, really all poetic stuff. And it really helped me in walking into that prepared me for the night I was at I was like trying to get in some petitioning some classes, and I wanted to go home. And all I heard was go to the hospital, right? And if my ears weren't open and my heart wasn't open at that point, I probably would have went home, right? But then I went to the hospital, and that's the night my dad died. So, if I was shut off and I didn't want to face any of that thing, I wouldn't, if I was just completely shut off to it, I wouldn't have been able to hear that voice tell me that.
For sure. So thank you for sharing such a vulnerable moment. Um, what I heard you also say in there, like, this sounds like an amazing tool that people undervalue, but is to journal, to write, to put it out and make it real, so that you're able to hear those whispers that you might need to hear to move forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's however you need to do it. Is there's been a number of different metaphors. The first one my mom gave me was like your gunny sack, right? You push all your emotions into this sack, and it holds you down, and it limits the amount of it protects you from the amount of like negative dark feelings, but it also suppresses you from feeling happiness and joy. And it was this concept early on, because they were separated when I was like 6 years old, so we went through like counseling and therapy at a very young age. And it was that principle of that is releasing that. And if you want to find success and what success means to you, you have to clear that, to hear that voice, to truly hear that voice.
So are you successful now, Anthony?
100%, right? Like, it's been a journey of having to wake up to that over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Because and my wife were actually just having this conversation of like, oh, where do we want to take our business? Where do we want to go? What do we want to do? And she kind of threw out some stuff, which stuff I would have thrown out in the past. But then I was like, look, I put away my own wants, needs, and desires and what my day-to-day life looked like, and paid myself with my business very little so that I can eventually grow it to what? Right? And I never started with me and put me first. So I would say, like, I think a universe, because inside that frame of that thing, there's unique principles to you, but there's also universal principles that fit within that frame. And it's your values, your wants, needs, and desires have to fit within that frame. You
Yeah.
get to define that. That's universal for everybody, right? And if you suppress those, you're not going to feel successful.
Right. Do you think it's complicated by being in a long-term relationship? Like how do you deal with maybe you both having some components of success that don't agree with one another?
Oh yeah, I mean the
Assuming you don't agree on everything.
amazing, the craziness, the amazingness, and just how my wife and I went from dating into getting married to where we're at is that, from when we started dating, we were like, I was starting the gym out of my garage, just started helping out. So as we went, and that was like, so I talked about leaving that, like, senior care, my first business, because I was in partnership with my mom and my sister. And it just didn't, like, if we talk about being in alignment, which ties into that, is that you have to be on the same page. And it's taken a long time. We've been on the same page, we've off the same page, we've on the same page, and it constantly evolves, and you have to really literally communicate what it is. And one thing that I really, I'm going on to day 2 with my wife and talk about relationship success. I was like, you know what? Like, there were certain things that I wasn't getting, right? And I was like, look, I allowed myself to get pissed off. And then I realized that I need to communicate what I want. I need to get clear about what I want and communicate that. So I still have to do today, day 2 on this, but it's 469 questions to create dialogue with your spouse.
That's a lot of questions, man.
Yeah, so I'm going to do one a day. So
Oh, is it 469 questions to success or what?
it's just to create connection and communication and all that stuff. So,
Oh, that's amazing.
but
Well, it's
yeah,
really amazing that you're doing that, though. Like, I think it's stereotyping, but I think a lot of people, and which is why I try to bring different types of coaches on, a lot of people expect that from women or women coaches, right? But to find male coaches that are like, you're a fitness guy, you're not, like, all those stereotypes are broken, right? You still are vulnerable, but you are a great coach, but you're not a soft kind of guy either. You all of those different things, and I think it just shows that success comes in every single package, and all of us can achieve it. And like, stereotypes are bunk too, I suppose, is probably a good one.
yeah. I mean, we've been, and we go back to this frame, right? We've been given a frame.
True.
Growing up in our country, growing up in our community, growing up in our family, our initial frame was given to us, right? And pushed upon us. And I just don't think that we, as in our economic and, like, our evolution, right? If you want to say economic and socioeconomic and all that stuff, have been at a place in time prior to now where we can have these discussions, and we can basically, people talk about going into a 5th dimension. If you want to talk about going into the 5th dimension, there it is, right? It's not some, like, esoteric spiritual woo-woo-y thing. It's going from, look, we spent the last 100 years, like, at war, at this, and a whole, like, disruption of, like, the remaking of 100 years of the family and what that meant. Then, we have, different aspects of, feminism and all this. How do we went from this society prior to this where it was okay to enslave people, to women weren't equal, to, like, but it was all based on, but we were moving toward this ideal that was set 200 and something years ago. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, we haven't been at a place in time where I don't know how it was in the Middle Ages and all that stuff. Like, but we kind of know, right? We have some history, but where we could actually fully embrace both sides of our being.
Right. I think it's beautiful. Like there's masculine and feminine in every gender, right? There's compassionate men and compassionate women. There's strong men, there's strong women, and being able to define success on your own terms and try to have your own frame and not just the one that you're kind of programmed with. It sounds like a good path to get more of what you want.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and we adopt other people's friendship. We think that's the way to go. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day,
But then you're not living authentically, right? Like, all of that to avoid a little bit of the with the darkness. It sounds like that's not the best way to go.
yeah, but I don't even think that conversation has been like, maybe it's been available with people who've been this weirdo spiritual, like it hasn't been practical.
Yeah, I think exactly, which is kind of where the whole idea of practical wisdom came up. Because I can't even imagine having this conversation with my dad, right? My dad passed about a year ago. So your story was like very feeling for me. But my dad was not talking all this stuff. Like he just, he did not come from a place where it was a conversation. He's like, fear, I'm not afraid of anything. I can do anything. Success is whatever I decide it's going to be. There's like very different vibe. But my brother, you talk to my brother, it's different. Like he can have those conversations. So I wonder if it just brings up this idea for me of your perspective. Almost feels like there's a collective consciousness of success too. Like there's a part of all of us that like is connected, that has a component in being successful and allowing us to have these types of conversations.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, because like I go back to the experience of, I mentioned going to the hospital, right? And going through that experience where, all of a sudden my dad started to cough and started, things started going bad real fast, coughing up blood, all that stuff. And then, they were running, nurses came in and they're like, I need you to put him on the bed. And I picked him up and put him on the bed. And right then I felt, him leave, you
Mhm.
know, and it was this convergence of like a smack in the face to see how fearful he was in that moment, and to get an understanding of like, you know I was like, I'm not saying I wasn't, I got a better understanding of death, and like you just have to let go, and like you have to go through that. And then me and his best friend started talking, and he was kind of a different thinker, and I was like, the experience that I got out of that was, there is, if I listen to what I was taught growing up in a Southern Baptist school, going into a Catholic school, about what Jesus did say about, like I am within you and God's within all of you. I was like, okay, then that means we were all the part of this spirit. And this was before I never even touched any of this. Like this is like 2000,
Yeah.
2002, and that, our real purpose is to bring the goodness of that spirit into the world. Right. And each of us and like, I mean, I was 20, what, 21, 20, something like that. I don't know. I don't remember. Like, I think it was 2002. And I was going to be 21. I was 20 years old. So, and all this download of like knowledge and wisdom, and looking at, and I always had this question because I was just raised in the Christian faith, right? Either Catholic or Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I just feel like spirituality, from a Hindu to Buddhism to all this other stuff, and I rejected the fact that Christianity demonized the other religions. I said, I really feel like they're speaking about the same thing, right? And that, if you look at reincarnation and you talk about, and you look at in Christianity, there's eternal life. I mean, come on, like
Same concept.
if you pull away the details, and it's like, okay, there's this thing there. There's a correlation between them,
For sure.
And so,
Wow,
yeah.
that's heavy stuff, man, Anthony, right? It's huge. That's huge stuff. I appreciate that very much. I think that there's something we said. I grew up similar, right? actually was Catholic, and then my stepdad was Southern Baptist. So we did the flip and then the flop back to the Christian. And I think I always felt very blessed to know that I didn't believe my God was a vengeful God. I always believed he was a loving God, and a loving God wouldn't hate others. So it allowed me to be okay with that idea that, I don't know if I'm right or they're right, but I know there's something. And so I don't have to be right. I just
Yeah.
have to be. Uh, but I think that having that realization maybe of that, if you believe that there's a spirit in you, or believe that God is in you, or there's a collective conscious, whatever it is, um, it does make it less scary though. I mean, like there's some fears that aren't as big or as black or as dark if you know there's somewhere you might be going, or that's where you're supposed to be at that moment. I mean, you were supposed to go to the hospital, and thankfully you did, right? So maybe there is something to be said for that we're all connected in some way. Maybe
Well,
that's
talk about like that part of it, like that. So talking about the aspect of there's something after, right? One thing was really frustrated in it. It was this deep, like visceral, like just anger about what Christianity, and especially like, Bible thumping Southern Baptist convert you type of, word that, look, you're a sinner, you need to convert, you need to be saved, and you're going to go to heaven. And I'm like, well, what the hell are we doing here then? Why are you taking, and then there's going to be this beautiful thing after we're here. Then what are we spending 80 to 75, 80, 100 years here for?
yeah.
And it's spit in the face to the gift that you've been given to live and experience in this physical world. If you're just going to say, hey, we're going to go to heaven, like, stop that. Maybe if you're in a bad place, you're meant to try to figure out how to get into a better place.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful in a frustrated way. But yeah, I mean, why piss off your whole life? I mean, just like live it, like figure out what the lesson might be so that you can be more of.
Well, we wouldn't do it with our loved ones, right? We wouldn't do it like, oh, your child, right? Let's put this child as, oh, don't worry about your child now, because if you just accept this and bring this into your life, then you're going to have a better child in this next phase. If you wouldn't do that with your child, why would you do that with your life?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. Well, that was a really deep conversation about fear and success. Um, so
Real quick, and the whole connection is just bringing it back to what the purpose of your being here, right? And you align that with why you're here, right? And what do you need to learn?
yeah,
And what do you want to experience?
I think so.
Oh,
What I really love too, that like part of kind of your philosophy or what you're talking about is you're a really great example of how, like, there's not necessarily one success or one finish line, right? You've had a couple lifetimes, right, that have happened, right, with your father passing, and there was the football was like a whole separate piece, and opening gyms is a whole separate piece, and like there's a bunch of other things that I just know about you from knowing you, but you've had all these little microcosms of lives, like businesses that have began and were successful in some level or taught you a lesson in some way. And so maybe that's a great lesson to take away, is that um, there might not just be one destination, and maybe you have a lot of little moments or a lot of little success points throughout your life, and the way to get to them is through the darkness and through the fear.
yeah, I would, if we want to simplify that, I talked about aligning your actions and all that stuff. Is that if your actions and where the road that you're on is what the voice within you is saying to go and do, and you have no, whatever, say, fucks to give,
Yep. Yeah.
That's all you're concerned with. I think if you find that place, you get centered and grounded in that place, then you'll find, even if everything's not perfect, and maybe there's more on in some areas, but if you're in connection and communication with that, in alignment with that,
Yeah.
then you'll experience like what you were really trying to get to.
Yeah. I think the point there is perfect isn't the definition of success, right?
Well, more, yes, but also just being in connection and listening to that voice.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. So any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave us all with before we wrap it up?
Just be in deep, search, right, for that voice, and try your best to live authentically through. And if you want to say authenticity, is through that voice and being everything in alignment and led from that voice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. I always appreciate your time. It's nice to be able to speak with you, and I look forward to our next chat.
All right, sounds good.
See you later. Bye.